I noticed something in the first, I think, 4 questions. We're gonna show you some of the responses to them, and then I'm gonna tell you what I noticed. The first clip is gonna be Elizabeth Warren. I believe this was the first question that she was asked, and it was, you've made all of these promises, but considering how people seem to be satisfied with the way things are going, is this actually feasible? And here was her response.
I think of it this way: who is this economy really working for? It's doing great for a thinner and thinner slice at the top. It's doing great for giant drug companies. It's just not doing great for people who are trying to get a prescription filled.
Okay, so what I noticed, maybe I'm crazy, but I think the first 4 questions were all different versions of, you guys have big ideas, but I don't threaten corporations, don't threaten the way things are going. I want you to say that you're not fundamentally going to change anything. And they pitch that in different ways, saying people seem to think the economy is doing okay, and those sorts of things. But all the questions seem to be, don't say that you're not gonna rock the boat too much. And I was glad to see Elizabeth Warren right out the gate saying, no, I'm going to do that. And your idea that the economy is doing well, sure, some of these macroeconomic numbers are fine. CEOs are doing okay, the stock market's fine. But for regular workers, it's not doing amazingly. And that was something that she returned to throughout the debates.
She was incredibly strong this first hour. Like I said, I think kind of everybody kind of fell off the second hour, but she was strong from jump.
I think I thought she was strong throughout, but maybe there was a difference hour to hour. But I think to the point, John, I feel as though a skilled politician, and certainly someone with the ideas and passion of an Elizabeth Warren, and most of the people on that stage, should be able to take any question, even if it comes from aren't things really okay though when you think about it perspective. They should be able to take that and turn it to the reality, which is, no, things are not great. Things are great for fewer and fewer people, which is exactly what Elizabeth Warren said. And then when she says it, people at home are thinking, yeah, she's right. It just, and she amplified the message, which is only the richest, the elite in this country are getting fat on this system. And I'm gonna be your advocate so we can all try to improve in this system.
Yeah, and I don't know, I mean, I just think personally, if I was a member, if I was one of the anchors on MSNBC or CNN or whatever, and we have this reputation of being insulated from what the real world is like, I wouldn't have asked a question that seemed to imply that I think that people don't have a problem paying for their medication, that we're not drowning in student loan debt, that people could go out and buy a house if they want to, that the fact that unemployment might be somewhat low, although higher than it was a year ago, doesn't imply that a lot of people aren't working in jobs that don't pay them as much as they expect, that wages aren't going up. Those are the sorts of things that you should understand, and there's no reason why, it's not Fox News, that sort of understanding could be woven into the questions, but instead the questions come from a conservative point of view. Stock market's doing fine, thus the economy is doing fine. How do you explain yourself?
Fair point, and I'll even give you I believe what you're saying is exactly right. John's suggesting that there was a perspective that seemed as though it was right of center coming at these people. It almost felt a little Fox News-ish at times, and there was a dismissive quality that Chuck Todd had in one question. He asked Elizabeth Warren, you'll remember, Elizabeth Warren, we know you've got a plan for everything. Yeah, right. I know. I'm thinking, hey, pal, don't diminish that. You don't really have candidates that have a plan for much. They're full of platitudes and bumper sticker slogans like Donald Trump the last time. So why are you belittling that? Now, he was making the point, so what's your plan for Mitch McConnell? But I thought he got to that question in a belittling way. So I take your point. There was almost an uncalled for adversarial aspect to the questions.
Since you brought that up, why don't we actually go to that? So Warren, Mitch McConnell, how is she gonna deal with that? How is she gonna fight against him? And this, I think, was this in the second hour? Might have been the second hour.
I think it was the second hour,
yeah. It was Chuck, yeah.
So this is, we'll see how she did as the debate went on.
Do you have a plan to deal with Mitch McConnell if you don't beat him in the Senate? If he's still sitting there as the Senate Majority Leader, it's very plausible you be elected president with a Republican Senate. Do you have a plan to deal with Mitch McConnell?
I do. Well, here's how I see this happening. Number one, sure, I want to see us get a Democratic majority in the Senate. But short of a Democratic majority in the Senate, you better understand the fight still goes on. It starts in the White House, and it means that everybody we energize in 2020 stays on the front lines come January 2021. We have to push from the outside, have leadership from the inside, and make this Congress reflect the will of the people.
Okay, so that was Warren basically talking about political change via a movement, not just winning an election, but having and sustaining a movement that begins when you win the election and then continues until you've achieved your goals, that's the way that Bernie Sanders generally talks about how you affect change. It's not usually the way that Elizabeth Warren talks about it, but it was good to hear it out of her.
Yeah,
it sounded a little bit more like Obama. He didn't necessarily do it, but he certainly talked about it the first time out.
And you only have so much running room. And Brooke and I were talking about this. I mean, you really don't. What do you do? Mitch McConnell is there. It's something of a stalemate. But that really is the way you do it. You exact so much pressure, popular pressure, that McConnell begins to feel that heat.
Yeah, I just felt like, what's the perfect answer to that question? That's kind of what I was talking about.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know. I mean, we could get into some sort of arcane parliamentary procedure and stuff like that. And there are some components of what we generally think of as rules in the Senate that are largely traditions. Some of those have been messed with in the past few years. Advice and consent is a fairly vague thing. It doesn't necessarily mean exactly what we say that it means in practice. I'm not necessarily saying we should change fundamentally how we get Supreme Court justices, but if they're gonna do this every time, and just today Trump said, no, if I get the day before the election, if I get a Supreme Court vacancy, I'm nominating someone. Well, at some point, they're not playing fair, so perhaps we should start to think about something else. But you can point out that if he's not gonna go along with that we are going to break him. We're gonna break his majority. We're gonna try to take him out in his election. We're gonna take out the others in the Republican caucus in the Senate. And just acknowledging the fact that you need to have that movement, that the power doesn't just come from Democratic leadership, that it comes from the grassroots, I think is important, and I want to hear more of that.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below, and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.